No, ladies and gents, we start today's lecture with a short interview report. At the beginning of this course, I try to define the basic concept which is necessary to analyze a formation of global world economy. We are over space, time, conceptual background, and so on. The second phase, we defined the basic structure of medieval economy. The northern pole, the southern pole, and the meeting place Champagne-Brie and the affairs of Champagne-Brie. At this period, early formation of world economy closed the greatest humanitarian disaster of European history, the Black Death. And the last slide of last week, we try to summarize the conclusion of Great Plague. Finally, we concluded that this was the starting date and the starting event of modernization of Europe, because the crisis, the deep crisis, 1/3 of European population died. This crisis defined that the feudal system not efficient. Therefore, introduced a crucial innovation, a centralized state, a regional affairs, and the regional currencies, which were interesting, even in the 14th century. And the first city, you remember, I hope anyway, you remember the definition of Fernand Rodolphe, how we can define a world economy. Basically, has 3 criteria. One central under direction function, under direction, one leading city. The second criteria, we can define the boundary, which is the limit where the expense of the trade higher than the benefit, which are and which were the boundary. And the third criterion, there were 3 areas: core area, semi-peripheral area, and the peripheral area. The first leading city of European history and the global history was one Mediterranean city-state which called Venice. Somebody visited in Venice? I suggest to you, unbelievable place. Unbelievable place because no any similar city in Europe. Basically different even the Italian cities. I remember I received a fellowship at the end of the 80s in the 20th century before your birth date, and I came back from Florence to Budapest, and I stopped in Venice, and I had to decide. I had 5 minutes. I stay Venice or not, and I arrived by train. I walked out the railway station. And it was a surprise. A surprise. The strange buildings, the channels. And later I realized this is the ugliest part of Venice. Other districts much better. But it's very interesting visiting to Italy. I suggest to everybody, because the dimension and the depth of history not comparable. If you walk in Szeged, for example, or Central European cities, majority of buildings built in 19th century, or the oldest one in the 18th century. But Italy stratified the culture back to 3,000 years. Unbelievable, unbelievable. You walk on the street in Florence, one building constructed by Etrusc people before the Roman area. Unbelievable. And Venice, it's basically different. Okay, but look at history and the age of Venice. This is the first period in the history of European and the global economic system. Venice was the first leading city. Which was the reason? of success of Venice. After the great crisis of 14th century, income of state decreased everywhere. For example, in the case of England, income, this is the larger circle, before the Black Death, and the smaller one, the darker one, after the Black Death. In the case of England, almost 2/3 of royal income disappeared. Somebody know which was the most important event of this period? 100 Years' War. 100 Years' War. Because before the formation of Great Britain, England wasn't a kingdom of Ireland. Why? Because lot of dynasty came from France. Therefore, it was a mixture of provinces, partly in the continent and partly in British Isles. It's a mixture. And very important, 100 Years' War. Why? Because our English army basically based on mercenaries necessary to pay them and decrease the income of English kingdom, therefore decline efficiency of continental army, and finally lost the 100 Years' War, which was a great success for English kingdom. Why? Because lost the connection to the continent and turned to the direction of geographical discoveries. Therefore, it's a good example, sometimes the fail and unsuccess situation open the way for long-term success. Okay, but turn back to the story. Decrease the income. Each continental country, Spain, France, Burgundy, and England. But if we are looking at city-states in northern Italy, the decrease of income much more moderate. Why? Because these city-states specialized to luxury trade, silk, pepper, generally the spice trade, and the consumer of luxury products saved the income much better than the simple citizens of contemporaries. Therefore, relative poor compared with the territorial state, the continental state, increased the city-state. Look at history of Venice. If we are looking at Venice, Venice formed 60 islands or smaller islets, and the general mention of the shield, non arat, non seminat, non vendemiat. This is a Latin term. Somebody know what mean this Latin sentence? Nobody? Cheers. We are not sowing, we are not plowing, we are not harvesting. We are not a peasant. It's a very, very proud citizen declare we are not peasant. Why so important? Because this is the period, a traditional period, when divided the society according to social status. Not the language, not the culture, but the social status. It's a boundary inside of the society there were between the peasant, citizen, and the nobleman, and the nobility. Okay, this is the citizen, bourgeois society. Non arat, non seminat, non vendemiat. Okay, look at one, you didn't visit in Venice, therefore very useful to see, necessary to realize some impression about the city. And I show a very short movie about the city. Okay.
Rising from the waters of Venice lagoon is a place like no other. Italian city of Venice. Once the world's greatest port, here, protected from the swells of the Adriatic, Venetian merchants created an impossible city of incredible wealth. Long hailed as the most breathtaking city on earth, there is no denying that sometimes Venice can be overwhelmed with admirers. But if you take your time and treat her gently, she will reward you with moments of profound beauty and bliss. Most visits begin in the central district of San Marco, where you find one of the world's great squares, St. Mark's. Arrive with it at dawn, and the piazza will be yours to enjoy, without the crowds. St. Mark's Square is surrounded by some of the city's finest architectural jewels, but there are none greater than St. Mark's Basilica, the treasure house of holy relics from the body of St. Mark to a lock of the Virgin Mary's hair. St. Mark was known as Mark the Lionhearted, and everywhere you turn in Venice you'll see this proud symbol. Across from the Basilica stands the city's beloved bell tower, St. Mark's Campanile. Climb the tower to see Venice stretch out in all her marble and red-tiled splendor. Below the tower is one of the city's great landmarks, Doge's Palace.
Slide a little bit there sometimes.
The masterpiece was the seat of the Republic's power and prestige. Today, its courtyards, apartments and chambers are a museum, which celebrates centuries of Venetian achievement and glory. Just outside stand the columns of San Marco and San Teodoro, the traditional gateway to the city. Here, under the winged lion of Venice, begin your journey along one of the world's great aquatic thoroughfares, the Grand Canal. For almost 2.5 miles, the canal winds through Venice. It is her main artery, her lifeblood. Ride the Vaporetto dell'Arte and explore the canal's treasures at your leisure.
Okay.
Or ride it.
Good. This is the modern part of the history of Venice, the Vaporetto. But very interesting the story of Venice, because no reliable documentary sources about early history of Venice. Nobody knows who founded and when. There are a lot of legends that people escaped from the continental area on the age of migration. This is the most probable version of the history, early history of Venice, because on the age of migration, a lot of armies wandering on the ruins of the Western Roman Empire, and the most reliable legend from one Roman city named Aquileia. Located on the northern part of the coast of Adriatic Sea, escaped to the small island near to the coast. This is the one, but no documentary sources about it. And very important peculiarity of early history of Venice, this city was a part of Byzantine Empire. If you will visit to Venice, very important to focus mythology and the style of building very near to the Byzantine Empire and the Constantinople. Quite a special, no similar whole of the Italian peninsula. But very important consequence of connection to the Byzantine Empire, that the Byzantine Empire on the early history of Venice saved a big brother, Each situation, a Byzantine empire saved the city. It was very important. Other conclusion of the connection, close connection to the Byzantine Empire, which was the religion. Somebody know? Of the citizens? Orthodox. Orthodox. It was a lot of conflict with the Vatican, for example, because time by time a call for conversion, a citizen of Venice, which saved orthodoxy. This was the most Western headquarter of orthodoxy in Italy. Okay, and the most important activity of Venice and the city-state, a spice trade. Very important peculiarity of the culture of Venice, it's very conservative. No any innovation, but very high the adaptivity. What means the adaptivity? Other city-state, other community introduced some innovation, which function in the practice, adapted very quickly and very flexible manner. Which was the source of the strength of Venice. Protection of Byzantine Empire, as I mentioned, Big Brother behind them, Big Brother saved in the age of migration. The second one, good geographical defensible position. If we are looking not the best picture, but you can see this is the Adriatic Sea. The form of Adriatic Sea very similar to the bag. Therefore necessary to save the entrance of the bag. Somebody know which island locate on the bag, on the entrance of the bag? Very famous recently in the tourism. Corfu, of course. Corfu. Very popular place of the tourism of Adriatic Sea. Therefore, when enough strength accumulated by Venetian Empire, conquered Corfu, island of Corfu, and fortified the military base and base of the fleet. Okay, this was the first line of the defense. The second one, somebody visited in Croatian area, Croatian. It's a lot of small island. Therefore, this was the second line of the defense, a lot of island, which is ideal for hiding the fleet, hiding the military position, and finally entrance of the channels. This was the third line. Therefore, if somebody attacked and organized a military campaign against Venice, not so easy to conquer, because three line, deeply stratified defense saved the city-state. Okay, very important economic adaptiveness, as I mentioned, no innovation, no any innovation which invented in Venice, nothing, but other cities, innovation adapted very quickly and flexible manner. Very interesting, majority of audience came from the Faculty of Economics. And very interesting, if we are looking the recent innovation and innovative enterprises, very strange, successful enterprises who invented some innovation. Therefore, very interesting, if we are looking the most successful, for example, in the sector of IT, majority of successful IT enterprises, the second came from the second wave, except one, Apple. Because Apple in the IT sector arrived on the first phase of innovation. But any other, second and third. Why? Because who are in the front area, very dangerous. Because which in inventions which try to introduce, nobody tested. And in the real case of innovation, majority of idea, no issue. Therefore, if somebody, it's true in the case of even the scientific research, majority of scholar focused a safe place. Because somebody walking to the front, to the periphery, it's very high the danger that fail. A little bit was the same strategy in the case of Venice. No innovation, but something function in other city-state, other merchant community adapted very quickly. But the price, high price of innovation, never paid by Venetians. Okay, and the most important goal of them, monopolizing control of spice trade. As I mentioned in 2 or 3 hours lectures before, the highest profit produced by spice trade. And a lot of other city-states try to monopolize, for example, Genoa and Pisa, which were the rivals of Venice. And Venice tried to monopolize the control of spice trade. And very important in the trajectory and the recovery of Venice, the role of crusade. Everybody knows which is the crusade. This is the great movement, military movement, for reconquering the Holy Land. It's a Near Eastern area around the Jerusalem. It's a crusade. It's a crusade. It's very cruel, a lot of cruel element had in the crusade, but very important advantage was for the city-state of northern Italy. Why? Because on 2 ways had to travel to Holy Land. The first one, it's a riding through of Central Europe, Balkanian Peninsula and Anatolia. It's very exhaustive and very long riding. But it's one, and other one, walking to the port of Venice and sailing directly to Akkon. This was the official port of the crusade state in Holy Land. Why so important? For Venice, for Genoa, for Pisa. Because necessary to pay the ticket. Everybody. Not only for the night, but for the horses too. Moreover, necessary to organize the logistical background of military campaign. The weapons, the foods and everything which necessary for military campaign and for army and for the warriors. Therefore, the crusade, a huge source of income for Italian city-state. Moreover, opened the way for Eastern trade. Opened the way for Eastern trade for them. Okay, if you remember the former time, 2 lectures before, I showed this slide yet. Amalfi was the first city-state which tried to organize a spice trade, and after the decline of Amalfi, 3 city-states tried to monopolize the spice trade in Italy: Pisa, Genoa and Venice. This is basically distributor trade, not production area. It's distributor trade. Majority of spice arrived from Indian Ocean. Oriental spice, pepper, nutmeg, ginger, cinnamon. You remember this slide, but step to the next. Pisa quite early fall out from the rivalry, because if you realize, in consequence of war between Florence and Pisa, at the beginning of 15th century, this is a Pisa. If we are looking some years later, no Pisa, because Florence occupied. Therefore, left only 2 rivals for the monopoly of spice trade. If we are looking Genoa versus rivalry, Genoa versus Venice, the first milestone, Genoa victory at Corsola. You remember 3 lines of the defense line of Venice. First Corfu, second one Croatian, Dalmatian or Croatian island, and the last one entrance of Channels. Corsola is the second one. The second line. It's a Croatian island. Corsola, recently the Croatian name. The second, 1 century later, Genoa seized Chioggia. Chioggia, the entrance of Channels. This is the gate enemy on the gate, as a Second World War's movie name, title show. Genoa arrived to Chioggia, entrance of Genoa, entrance of Venice. But in this critical situation, elected a dictator. You remember the story of dictator election? Came from the history of Roman Empire. Roman history, not Roman Republic period. You know the dictators? Which situation elected dictators in the Roman history? Somebody know? Nobody. It's a critical situation. And for dictator, it's a temporary title. For half year, no more, half year. But in the case of dictator, had absolute power. Deeds which necessary, but only for half hour. In this critical situation, a Venetian citizen introduced this very old ruling technology. Elected Vettor Pisani for dictator, he was a doge, it's a leader, political leader, and each rich citizen of Venice offered the value of half value of fortune, half value, everything, every fortune, and recruited army from Balkanic Peninsula. Somebody know which Balkanic folks served the most important part of the mercenaries of Venetian army? My guess. You know which nation living in the Balkanic Peninsula? Bulgarians, Serbs, Bosnians, Albanians, Macedonian. Which one? Which was the most important raw material of Venetian army? Albanians. Why? Albanians living in mountain area. Therefore, a little bit same story like in Kos, you know. Napoleon came from Kos. Why? Because Kos, it's a small island in the Mediterranean Sea. It's a very bad physical environment. Therefore, the ambitious people is moving as a guest worker for other place. Who is the best paid guest worker? A mercenary. A mercenary. This is the same situation in Albania or Albanians. Hostile physical environment. There is a Turkish student, no Turkish student. In Ottoman Empire, there are two high positions, a Sultan and the Great Vizier, the General of Army. The highest number of Great Vizier was Albanians. Therefore, Albanians, it was a great brand of early modern and late medieval period. Albanians, the best warriors. Not by chance, majority of Venetian army came from Albania. Okay, with help of great income and successful recruiting of Albanian warriors, Vettor Pisani and the Venetian army won the great battle in Chioggia and closed the rivalry. And this rivalry closed the peace treaty in Turin. Turin, this is a North Italian cities, closed the rivalry and finally declared the victory of Venice. Therefore, if we calculate and we try to define a period of Venice when Venice dominated whole of European economy and the forming global economy started in 1381 and closed around the end of 15th century. This is the period of Venice. Okay, and finally, as I mentioned, occupied and conquered Corfu and closed and formed the farthest defense line which defended very reliable manner city-state and formed behind a continental background, a colonial area occupied Padua, Verona, Brescia, and Bergamo too. This is the network of Venetian spice trade. We can realize there is this is the source of spice from the Near East, and the most important source of spice came from Alexandria in northern part of Africa. Okay, the success of southern pole of European economy basically based on weakness of northern pole. Why? Because the northern pole, the Low Country, recent Belgium and the Netherlands, basically was victim of decline of population. Why? Because industrial center based on income of the citizens, income of inhabitants of Europe, decrease the population, decrease the income of actor and artisan of industry. And very important, the strengthening of textile industry in northern Italy. Somebody know, my guess, which is the most important textile industrial and fashion center in Italy? Milan. Started in the 14th century. And very important, great advantage, because the fashion and the fashion industry appeared in the 14th century. Not by chance, recently we are the most important core area of the fashion industry, haute couture in France. Paris and Milan, recently, Paris and Milan. And Milan career started since the 14th century. Okay, if we are looking the economy of Venice, very important, compare income of city-state. Very strange, but in the Middle Ages, generally no budget, no any documentary sources about the budget. Why? Because this was the age of oral culture. The people discussed with each other and memorized the crucial information. Very, very moderate, which wrote down. I spent my childhood in a small village, and a little bit I have information and impression about the traditional society. And I remember when I discussed with my father, who was born in the middle of more exact, middle of 20s, 26. Majority of information never wrote down, but was in the brain. Therefore, in the traditional information, the function of the memories and the memorized information much higher. Recently, not necessary to memorize, because you can type and you can see on internet and the web and other. But in the traditional people, very important, the size of memory. You know what mean who were the Druids? Druids. Nobody knows. Druids were the priests of Celtic people. A priest of Celtic people. German, Teutonic people, and basically Teutonic people. And Celtic, like a Scottish people, like a Welsh, like Irish. And the religion of the Druids, no words wrote down. Everything memorized, and passed the information generation by generation. And when killed the last Druids, each of heritage expired. In the traditional society, much more the role of memories. No necessary wrote down everything. Therefore, very strange, the first information in Venice about the budget, whole budget of Venice, it's consequence of legal procedure. Why? Because Doge Tommaso Mocenigo accused with corruption. And for jury process necessary to collect and reconstruct the income and the cost of state. And with help of legal process, finally the accusation realized he was a corrupt politician, not the first and not the last, realized the structure of income and the cost of Venetian state. The budget was between 5 and 10% of national income. Very important to define the national income. Which is the national income? The simplest version introduced by Simon Kuznets, probably you know his name, Simon Kuznets. Simon Kuznets defined, it's very short and very simple, but it's enough for our reconstruction. Simon Kuznets defined national income, a new value which produce a country or city's economy. New value. The reconstruction not mean, only the new value. Okay, next step. The budget of Venetian economy able collect 5 to 10% of national income. It's much or not. Look at the modern state. In United States, the federal state, how many percent of national income collect by taxes and fees? Somebody know? How many percent? Guess. 23 to 27. A Hungarian government, how many percent? For Hungarian student first. But the foreign student may try. 23. 20? No? 48. And the Norwegian? 78. Therefore, the best place working on the government. Because this is the largest bowl of meat. Okay, but in Norway, no high the proportion of the corruption, but this is the birth of centralized state. Only 5 to 10% was able redistribute on the channel of city-state economy. And it's mean in the city, number of population of the city changed around 150,000 people. 150,000 people. On that time, this is the largest city, whole of Europe. Okay, national income, which might be 10 or 5 to 10%, estimate around 750,000 ducats. It's gold ducats. Very important. Gross national income of city estimate derived back from the national income. It's depend to calculate with 5 or 10%, might be 7.5 or 15 million ducats. Because there is a insurance, if we calculate two different rate of redistribution. Estimated population, as I mentioned here on the table, 150,000. Therefore, per capita income of city might be changed between 50 to 100 ducats. Population of commercial empire mean Corfu and Padua, Bergamo, Brescia. It's whole of the empire might be 1.600,000 ducats. and monetary flow, which flow up whole of the maritime empire, estimate to 40 million. It's very, very dry information. Why so interesting? It became a little bit more interesting if we compare the contemporary city-state. Venice, if we calculate only the city, the national income change around 800,000 ducats. But we calculate whole of commercial empire, mean Corfu, mean Bergamo, Brescia, Padua, and the others, 1,600,000 ducats. Compared with the France, population of the France on the same time, 17 million, 17 million. And the national income, less than whole of Venetian commercial empire, and quite close to the small city. But the population, which necessary to organize, 17 million. Spain income, it's comparable with the city income, national income, but the population of Spain a little bit under 10 million. England, same dimension, but the population 6 million. Hungary, the best period, 500,000, but the population around 4 million. This is the source and the roots of great success of Venice. It's unbelievable concentration of money, and not only the money and the income, but flow of money. How used this huge flow of money? The first introduced the gold mining. Before great heyday of Venice, no minting of gold ducats, gold currency. Why? Because the dimension of trade so moderate that enough are silver coins. But increase the strength, increase the quantity of the trade and the products. Therefore, it became important minting a gold currency. Before that, used Byzantine ducats and Arabic ducats came from the Islamic countries. The first country who minted gold ducats was Genoa, the second one Florence, and only the last one Venice. Look at, which I mentioned some minutes before, Venice never introduced innovation. Left the occasion for other rivals, and if the innovation function, adapted. Look at the second one. How use the richness of Venice? Very important, the city construction and reconstruction. Probably you know that the soil of island very unstable. Therefore, huge quantity of timber it's beaten to the soil of island, increase the strength of the soil and the strength, the basis of construction. And if somebody used the timber for construction, realize using a timber, it's a temporary solution because it's rotten for some decay, and necessarily a new timber and new pillars beating into the soil, and it's moving down continuously. It's very expensive. Secondly, Venice was the first country, whole of Europe, who developed a diplomatic network. This was the heritage of Byzantine Empire. The second one, trade post beside the diplomatic network, and finally necessary to pay the mercenary troops, first Albanians. Okay, if we are looking the world economy centered to Venice, the central zone was neighborhood of Venice, Milan, the town of Lombardy, Genoa, and the Florence. And the semi-periphery, this is the German Europe. Augsburg, Vienna, Nuremberg, Ratisbon, Ulm, Basel, only London and Southampton connected to this continental German area. If we are looking at the communication axis of Venice, we can see two directions. One direction, southeast to northwest, and other one, this is the traditional direction, Iberian Peninsula, until Hungary, because Hungary is quite closely connected to Venice. Somebody remember the building of main building of Szeged University? Which animal there are on the corner of the building? Lion with wings. Lion with wings. Why? It's possible I spoke about yet. Because the bishop who founded the religious district around Szeged came from Venice. Therefore, if you walk on Szeged, a lot of places there are Venetian symbols. For example, a Clausel Square. There is a well with 4 lions with wings. Therefore, it's very important because Hungary was it's a special reason, but historically Hungary was a background of food production. Basically, a cattle export connect Venice to Carpathian Basin to Hungary. Okay, if we are looking inside and the commercial activity of Venice, probably I told to you that subtenants and trader who distributed a spice in the continental area, partly German merchant and partly Jews merchant. And the leader of Venetian trade, afraid from rivalry of Jews and the German trader, therefore used innovation of Arabian Peninsula, a fondux. A fondux mean and used a caravan cities. When arrive a caravan, the people who traveled and arrived to the city by caravans closed a compulsory segregated district. It's surrounded with walls. Why? Because nobody knows who arrived with caravans. It might be a criminals. Therefore, a local inhabitant saved the trader with the walls. But the member of caravans saved from local criminals. Therefore, it was a good compromise for everybody. And in Venice, constructed 2 closed districts. One closed district for Germans, it's named Fondaco Tedeschi, and one district, a ghetto. A ghetto was only a name of district, a gattere. It was an industrial area which recultivated as inhabitant area. But originally in Venice, the ghetto didn't mean more, only name one district. Like for example, in Szeged, one district of Szeged. It's a down city, Alsóváros, for example. No more. But after example of Venice, ghetto became the synonym, a compulsory district for Jews everywhere in Europe. But the ghetto in Venice, only one name of the district. Why closed a segregated place rivals and the subtenants of traders? Because try to decrease the danger of organization and some secret organization of moving out from the direction position of the trade, of the spice trade. Okay, look at the commercial innovation which used by Venetians. The first and the most important, the first gold coins. Why is so important, the gold coins? Because increased the dimension of the trade. Who introduced the gold coins? First Genoese, secondly Florentine. Venice only the late adaptation. Look at the second one. Checks and bill of exchange, introduced by Florentine trader. No Venetians and Genoese, but Florentine. Holding companies. What mean the holding companies? A small economic actor organize, like for example, fisheries, organize some larger economic organization. Introduced by Florentine trader and merchant. Double entry bookkeeping. You know which is the double entry bookkeeping. And unbelievable. It's very simple. If somebody, for example, participate in the housewife education and housewife keeping training, this is the simple, this is the material of first lesson. It's mean a simple separation, cost and income. Cost and income. But unbelievable, no the Phoenician or the Greek or Roman or Maya or Aztec civilization wasn't able to introduce this very simple economic operation. Only the Florentine. Only the Florentine. Before the Florentine trader, the Phoenician, the Greek and the Roman, in the same column, read income and the cost and income, no separation. It's a very simple idea, but had to wait until the 14th century, Anno Domini. Okay, maritime insurance. Somebody drive a car, there is a mandatory insurance, which is the basic idea of mandatory insurance. Calculate how many car it's driving on the street and calculate the risk of accident. Everybody pays some small amount and from this budget able to finance reconstruction of the hurted and injured cars. This is the same logic in the maritime insurance. Everybody pay in to the budget a well calculated amount. And if somebody it's in the storm or for piracy or a lot of reason possible for the contemporaries lost the vessels, compensate the owner. Who introduced? Merchant of Florence. Unbelievable. A continental city, in the continental city, invented how we can improve the security of maritime trade. And finally, the first regular links with Flanders via Gibraltar. How can I see one map? Okay, you can see this is the Mediterranean Sea and this is the Atlantic Ocean. Somebody know why didn't sail the Greek and the Roman fleet on the Atlantic Ocean? Why? And the early period of Middle Ages, no vessels from Mediterranean Sea sailed via Gibraltar to the Mediterranean Sea. Nobody sailed. Some form of navigation on the ocean, sea, no experience, sailing experiences. Okay, in the case of shipbuilding, the most important information, the dimension of wave of water, wave of river or lake. In the Mediterranean Sea, for example, it's a simplification, this is the normal wave of wave, the distance between two waves. Therefore, this is the average size of the wave. Necessary construct ships which able to cross over the size of normal wave of sea, Mediterranean Sea. Why? Because it's shorter, it's not able to sail in a stable manner. It's too long, this is the same thing, optimized to the wave. But the size of the wave in Baltic Sea, in Atlantic Ocean, and the Mediterranean Sea, basically different. Therefore, which sailed good in the Baltic Sea, it's not good on the Atlantic Ocean. Which good for Mediterranean Sea, not good for Atlantic Ocean. There are two kinds of the solution. The first one, which introduced by Vikings. You know, Vikings are Norsemen people. Vikings constructed so small ships which adapted each condition. Up, down, but very small. And no problem for its going down and up. Other solution, which introduced in the 14th century, the great caravels, you know, the caravels, unbelievable large, usable everywhere. The typical caravels, 300 tons, 300, huge, two solutions, large one and the small one, which usable everywhere. Okay, turn back. And the first regular sea links with Flanders via Gibraltar introduced by Genoese. And very interesting, at the end of 14th century, lived in Genoa, two brothers, are Vivaldi brothers. Somebody listened about the Vivaldi sailor, not a musician, a sailor. And he wrote down, first time, that to India necessary to sail westward, to strike. Who performed this project? Cristoforo Colombo. In which city was born? Genoa. 2 centuries later, very interesting, very interesting. There is a city, some people, Vivaldi brothers, introduced some idea, sailed to west, and 2 centuries later, one sailor was born in the same city, performed. It's a heritage of idea. Heritage of idea. It's very important. Indicator and element of history. And search direct routes for Indies, Vivaldi brothers, and later Columbus. If we are looking this list of crucial innovation, no innovation came from Venice. No innovation. But each of these innovations adapted by Venetian. Okay, very interesting bourse, a stock of exchange. If somebody visited the Mediterranean area, during the summer half year, very, very moderate quantity of precipitation. Therefore, stock of exchange of Venice, it's open air stock of exchange. Here, on the temporary rain, escape under this roof, but generally the economic life, it's unfolded open air. The broker walking on the square discuss with each other. It's very special. Recently, if we are thinking about the stock of exchange, a closed place. But in the case of Venice, it's open air. On the square of in front of the church San Giacometto. Good. Unfortunately. But in consequence of a great crisis of 14th century, necessary to support and help for economic life. Probably you know the name of Keynes. Keynes. Keynes was a famous American economist who introduced a high state invention for recovery of economy. but it's not new idea. After the 14th century crisis, used the same economic strategy by Venetian state. Venetian state constructed the largest factory, whole of Europe. Its name, Arsenal. Arsenal. Original name of Arsenal, not a football club from London. It was a factory where constructed vessels and weapons. It was a state factory. And which is the most important expense of maritime trade? Construction, shipbuilding, construction of vessels. Therefore, like introduced by Keynes and the modern American state, a Venetian state financed construction of caravels, construction of galleys. And for Venetian trader, did a necessary invent for shipbuilding. Only used a temporary, how the name is, it's not losing, how the name is, renting system. Rented ships, whole of the ships or some part of the ships. But the basic expense of construction and function of the vessels financed by the state. And the trader had to finance the expense of renting, temporary renting. Therefore, the budget and the expense of the trade decreased by state support. Okay, which were the reason of decline of Venice? The first reason of decline of the Venice, regeneration of continental state, basically France and Spain. Other one, invasion of Ottoman Empire. Ottoman Empire occupied first Constantinople, later whole of the northern Africa, Arabian Peninsula, Near East, and Balkanic Peninsula. Whole of that. Therefore, this is the area of spice trade, source area of spice trade. Venice tried to find somehow the compromise with the Ottoman Empire, but the expense of the trade increased by that. This is the milestone of invasion, Constantinople, Kaffa, Syria, Egypt. And the most critical strike for the Venetian trade are geographical discoveries. Portugal and the Spanish discoveries. But if we calculate whole of the discoveries, necessary to enlarge a little bit the circle of the discoveries. The first one, Portugal. The second one, Spanish discoveries. After, very important to mention, it's somebody forgot taking to the list of discoveries, Russian discoveries. Russian discoveries. Because Russian discoveries were continental discoveries. But look at the dimension of Siberia. And very important to realize that the Russian discoveries reached even a northern part of Americas. Alaska originally was a Russian colony. Okay, Russian, Dutch, English, and the French discoveries. Therefore, if we try to describe the whole of the circle of discoveries, at least very important to calculate 6 different directions of discoveries. But look at the Portugal and the Spanish discoveries in the first circles. Which were the causes of discoveries? It's possible, I told to you, that on the same period started the Chinese discoveries and the European discoveries. Probably I spoke about this topic yet. Okay, we are over. Chinese discoveries failed because the empire turned to the continent, to the direction of continent, and strengthened the wall, the great Chinese wall, and the continental army, and lost, not only lost the fleet, but burned down whole of the fleet, whole of the fleet. But look at why was successful European discoveries. a very important, a continuation of reconquest. Somebody know which is the reconquest? There is a Spanish or Portuguese. You know Spanish. Okay, look at a normal structure of traditional European society. We can describe with the pyramid of triangle. 1% mobility, 10% citizens, bourgeoisie, and 89% serf or peasant. This is the normal structure. But look at population of Spain, population of Portugal. Nobility. 15% are bourgeoisie, 10%. Any other similar, peasantry is the last 75%. But the most interesting, high proportion of nobility. High proportion of nobility. Exception. Why so high? Because majority of nobility in Spain and in Portugal never had estate, a real physical estate, but specialized to military service, professional soldier. Why so? Which were the source of income? The fruits of war. Which is the fruits of war? For example, it's like partly in the modern time, it's raiding on the military area, and for example, taking hostages and selling a hostages. This is the fruit of war. Therefore, majority of income of large community of professional soldiers came from war. Therefore, the main interest this population continues warfare. But in 1492 conquered the last Muslim forts, Granada, and closed the age of reconquest of Iberian Peninsula. And for this professional soldier, necessary to find a new fields for military service, because if not able finance a nobleman status, falling down to the serfdom. And nobody would like to be serf. Nobody would like to be peasant. Therefore, one of the most important supporter of geographical discoveries, a professional soldier. The second one, a Christian church missionary ambition. Not by chance, in the second mission of Columbus, even participated a small community of Benedict monks. And if somebody knows the history of the colony and colonization of Spanish and the Portuguese empire, very important leader were monks and the leader of Roman Catholic Church, even in Japan, until the age of Tokugawa dynasty in Japan, under direction of Portuguese missionaries and the monks, lived a large Christian community. Therefore, the Christian church a global organization. And the income of church supported and helped financing the great cost of geographical discoveries. Turkish conquest in the Mediterranean Sea, because temporarily closed the connection toward Asian trade, and precious metal hunger. I spoke about which is the precious metal hunger. Precious metal hunger means European society, according to industrial activity and quality of the production, under the Chinese and Indian and Muslim civilization. Therefore, Europeans, if would like to buy spice and Chinese products, had to pay by precious metal. It pump out Never enough precious metal, and not by chance, this is the age of formation of a region of El Dorado. You know the region of El Dorado. Everything from precious metal, even this computer, everything precious metal. Not by chance, in the, for example, dictator of third world enjoy making everything from gold. You know, for example, it was the Orange Revolution in Ukraine, and plundered some buildings of regional oligarch, and even the toilet made from gold. This was the local El Dorado. This legend sometimes and somehow somewhere try to perform. Okay, why so important? Because a professional soldier, it's called the idea, I became very rich. I became very rich. And somebody was able to perform. You know the conquistador who conquered Inca Empire in Peru? Francisco Pizarro. Francisco Pizarro, he's a very famous person. In Spain, he was a pig shepherd. Pig shepherd. You know the hierarchy of shepherd. The highest one, horse shepherd. The second one, cattle shepherd. And the sheep. And the last one, the pig shepherd. Moreover, he wasn't a legal boy. His wife born out of marriage. Therefore, he was at the bottom of society, at the bottom, no lower. Traveled to Americas, organized a small army, conquered the Inca Empire, and he became a member of aristocracy. From the bottom of society. Only one person, but this was the model for everybody. This started the flow. You know the idea of American dreaming. Like perform a singer Madonna. Arrived to the New York with $38 and made a huge career. A lot of young women arrived to New York. More, higher amount. Call the idea, the example of Madonna. A little bit same situation in the case of Francisco Pizarro. From the bottom of society, arrived to the aristocracy. His friend killed, and recently the mummified bodies there is in the cathedral of Peru, which is the capital of Peru. Which is the name of capital of Peru? Lima, yeah, Cathedral of Lima. Thanks a lot. Okay. Why so successful the geographical discoveries? One of the most important reasons, a technical innovation. I hope you remember from the case of agrarian revolution in Europe, density of population is very moderate. Therefore, the local population, Europeans, open for technical innovation. New ships, caravels, I spoke about. Sailing system, which based a huge mast, which you down in the Baltic Sea. Cannons and muskets, based on the gunpowders, which invented in China. And the compass, which invented similarly in China. But look at where is the Chinese fleet? Burned down for imperial decision. In Europe, use the compass. For the open sea navigation without compass, didn't work. Very important, the scientific innovation. Mapping system, navigation, art of force. Very interesting how appeared the art of force. Translated the books of Julius Caesar. Why so? Great innovation. Because in the classical feudal military campaign, very simple. One army, other, running and killing each other. But when translated the famous book of generals, Julius Caesar and Marius, realized the contemporary Europeans in the age of Renaissance, that is the military campaign not so simple. There is a maneuvers, lot of different directions, and reinvented the art of wars of antiquity. It's great advantage for Europeans, because if we compare with China, with Indies, only 2 elements more developed Europe. Technology of navigation and cannons and muskets, firearms. No any others. 2 innovation. And for example, cannons and muskets, firearms basically came from China. But in China, it's a peripheral innovation both. Okay, movable cannons and portable muskets basically changed the nature of war. Why? Because in the feudal period, who are the most important actor of war? A knights, a heavy cavalry. It's very expensive. But in the modern times, invented a new form of war based to infantry. Which is the peculiarity of infantry? Very cheap. Necessary only 1 musket and infantry, one walking soldier, no more. Evaluation of infantry, on that time had the most famous infantry, Spanish musketeers, it's professional soldier, German Landsknecht, pikemen, Swiss halberdier. I spoke about the halberdier yet, no? No? Didn't. Okay, somebody visited in Switzerland? I spent 2 years in at the Bern University, and very interesting. I surprised, because Switzerland, historically, very poor country. It was a very poor country, until the Second World War, when, in consequence of neutral status, each side of the war, members and participants of each side of the war, took money to the bank account of Switzerland. And the majority of bank account owner died. And the Swiss banks used very clever manner this huge ownerless money. This is the source of the richness of Swiss bank system, but recently I read bad news in the case of Credit Suisse, but it's other story. But before the Second World War, it was a poor country. Not by chance, a majority of people in critical situation travel to other part of Europe as guest worker. And who are the best paid guest worker? Mercenaries. Like in the case of Albanians. And on the time, and it's poor people, very poor people, and used a very simple devices. A halberdier, a typical weapon of poor people, because a halberdier contained 3 weapons. 1 pike, 1 axe, and 1 hook. No rich people, only 1. It's using for killing as it's taking down from the horse a knight. It's a very poor people, but very hard and very living in the mountain area, walking one building, one settlement to other. It's a great training for them, and so successful that on that time organized the bodyguards of the Pope. Who are the bodyguards of the Pope? From the 15th century, Swiss halberdiers, even recently. Okay? And from out of European population, only 1 infantry became very famous, and the Turkish Janizary. You know who are the Turkish Janizary? The Turkish Janizary, originally Christian boys. And the Ottoman Empire had to pay a lot of different form of the taxes. And Janizary came from, it's a new army, the Turkish name, the translation of the Turkish name. And if we are looking at Ottoman Empire, on the formation of Ottoman Empire was approximately 20 million. But only 10 million were Muslim. Therefore, half of the Ottoman Empire, Jews, Armenians, Christian. And not Muslim population necessary to pay a blood tax. Not like in the modern hospital. Blood tax means the second boy. The second boy each family. Why the second? Because the first, it's follow the activity on the estate of the father. The second boy, around 10 years, moved to the Kazan and distributed Muslim family for learning the language, the Turkish language, and learning Muslim rights and the Muslim religion and the Islam. And turned back to the Kazan and started military education. It's trained to pike, trained to the sword, trained to the muskets, and very important and unbelievable innovation, each Janizary learn a civil profession. For example, shoemaker. Why? Because if injured in the battle, became a cripple, may continue the life as artisan. Unbelievable innovation, unbelievable. Okay, Turkish Janizary, very famous out of Christian community. The first demonstration of new infantry was the Battle of Pavia between the French and the Spanish army, and French knights. It's rode into the direction of Spanish musketeers, who fired on whole of the army. And in documentary sources wrote down that one bullet, it's cross on the body one French knight, and arrived to the other one, rode behind him. This was the first declaration that closed the age of heavy cavalry and started a new period. Thanks a lot for your attention.